Welcome to the Unit Economics Podcast. I'm Josh Stabinsky. Today's episode is a little different than the typical episode I put out. I was invited to a dinner party put on by CPGD. If you're not familiar with CPGD, it's a media platform for emerging CPG brands. It's built all around a newsletter, directory, events, and investor network. First of all, if you're interested in what CPGD is doing, I highly recommend checking out the episode I recorded with Zoya Varani, who is their head of growth. But I digress. This dinner party was hosted at Maxwell Social, which is a private members club and event venue located in Tribeca. It's a beautiful space, and I highly recommend checking it out if you're in the market for either of those. As part of the event, we tested out a new format, a pop-up podcast activity, where founders could sit down and record extremely short-form interviews. This was made possible by Asher Brooks and Theorist Studios. Theorist operates 2 podcast studios, both in Midtown New York, but they've also started a portable podcast studio, bringing studio-quality production on-site for creators and brands to record wherever it's convenient for them. So that's how we recorded this content. We were at Maxwell Social, utilizing Theorist's on-site podcast studio service. Because we only had around an hour or so to record, things had to look a little bit different. So I pre-prepared a list of 7 questions for founders to answer. Each was allowed to select one, and we recorded about 2 to 4 minutes with everyone who opted in. All in all, I wound up recording 9 of what I'm calling these mini interviews. They might sound a little disjointed from one to the next, but I thought this was a fun format, and I was excited to experiment with stitching them all together to see how it would come out. This is not a typical unit economics episode, but as always, I did learn a lot, and I do hope you enjoyed the conversations as much as I did. My first guest was David Litwack, founder and CEO of Maxwell Social. In 30 seconds or less, can you just introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about what you're building, what you do?
My name is David Litwack. I'm the founder and CEO of Maxwell Social. We are a private members club in Tribeca. It's very different. We're built like a billionaire's mansion. Our members can cook in our big kitchen together, and we're really all about participation and building a real community, not one of these subscription spaces or gated restaurants that are the recent Soho House clones.
David, what does the average person completely misunderstand about the industry or the space in which you operate?
Well, so we're in hospitality, but I own Maxwell. We're a private members club, and I think most people think that private members clubs are all about how many amenities you can package up into one space. They're a combination of bars, restaurants, spas, gyms, pickleball courts, you name it. And they're really bundles of amenities. And we kind of refer to those other clubs as subscription spaces or gated restaurants. They're not real communities. Most of them literally have do not approach rules. So they somehow manage to call themselves a social club while strenuously emphasizing that you should not be social and meet anyone new. So they tend to be places where you come with your own friends. And our view is that you should build a membership base that you're proud of, that you trust to actually, number one, approach other people because you trust them that they won't embarrass themselves or accost a celebrity or something like that. But that really you should also focus on the part that people theoretically sign up for when I join the social club, which is to be social and to meet new friends and build a community. So we have a kitchen that members cook in. They actually, when they join, they have to go through a 3-month cohort process where they actually meet a bunch of other friends, and we send them to dinners, actually force people to meet each other. We interview them 4 times before accepting them to basically measure fit. We run it like an actual social club should be run, because our criteria is, do we want to see this person every single Friday? Every single Friday we have an open bar happy hour from 5 to 8. We have a private chef that comes in during the day and cooks, and we try to build basically a real second home, not a third space.
How do you think about your total membership number and not exceeding whatever that natural maybe cap should be?
Yeah, I think the total membership number changes over time. You have people who keep their membership, shift in and out of town or phases of life, have kids, are more or less active. We're at 200 members right now. We're happy, but we think we can grow. We think there's a kind of a happy medium between novelty, meeting new people, meeting your friends of friends, and familiarity, running into those people. Everyone uses that phrase, cheers, when everyone knows your name. And most bars trot out that tagline and do nothing actually structural to make sure that everyone knows your name. So yeah, you need to have a model that is you can keep it tight and small. And I think that is the other thing when you package up a ton of amenities, when you have a gym, when you have a restaurant that's open 18 hours a day, that is hard costs. Those are staff members that you have to pay, opening hours, and you need to flip tables. And if you are trying to flip tables, your business model does not support someone hanging out for 6 hours, just shooting the shit and making friends. You want them in, you want them out. And so there's a kind of a weird incentive at play when you up your cost so much with all these amenities that you have to have a lot of members. So we try to kind of get off that hamster wheel, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, amazing. Well, I'm excited to follow along. Next up, I spoke with Sofia Juarez, founder and CEO of Casa Tequila. All right, Sofia, if you wouldn't mind just starting with a really brief background on yourself and the brand, that would be great.
Absolutely. So my name is Sofia. I'm the CEO and founder of Casa Tequila. Casa is a luxury sipping tequila crafted out of the reconnection to my Mexican cultural heritage after reconnecting to my father after more than 20 years of separation. And we offer a sipping tequila crafted using an ensemble method, which is a harmony of two methods of tequila production, harmonizing both the old world and new world techniques. So we use a combination of tequila tradicional and tequila ancestral.
Incredible. What does the average person completely misunderstand about the space in which you're operating?
So with the tequila category, so many people think it just has to be shot down. Just like that. That's really not how we enjoy tequila in Mexico. Tequila is to be sipped slowly, very neat, and enjoyed intentionally, just like you would a fine wine, a whiskey, an eau de vie, a port, or an after-dinner drink. Even an aperitivo style drink, like a spritz or an amaro, which you don't take down in a rushed fashion. And so we're really trying to educate the consumer about the high-quality tequila category, which is why we crafted one that's a sipper. So people could really just lay back, relax, and enjoy their night intentionally rather than rushing through that consumption experience.
Incredible. Well, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your story.
Thank you.
My next guest was Erin Barrett, founder of Goldilocks. Erin, thank you for being here. If you wouldn't mind just starting with a brief background on yourself and on Goldilocks, that would be great.
My name is Erin, and Goldilocks are better-for-you canned cocktails. We just launched them late last year in New York. The idea behind Goldilocks is a lot of cocktails on the market today are filled with sugar and additives. They don't have to report ingredients or nutritional facts like other food and beverage products. On the other end of the giant canyon of alcohol are 100-calorie seltzers. And the idea was, could we create something in the middle for people who still want to drink, but in a more intentional, thoughtful way? And so that was really the idea behind Goldilocks. I built it at my business school the past 2 years, and I just graduated last year, and so launched it immediately in New York. They're 5% spirit-based cocktails, 84 calories, less than 3 grams of sugar, and we use smarter, more intentional ingredients as well.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What's something the average person just completely misunderstands about the space in which you're operating?
People hear alcohol and they think it's super sexy. Like you're going to the club, there's bottle service, you're drinking, you're partying. Working in alcohol is not quite like that, especially when you're trying to grow and run a brand. It's a ton of manual labor. Most of the industry, the sales are actually built by small mom and pop stores throughout the country. And so you're doing a lot of back-breaking manual labor to grow the brand. I mean, that's what I've been doing in New York, like carrying 40 pounds of cans in 100-degree, 10-degree heat and everything in between. So yeah, it's not as sexy as people think.
Amazing. Well, thank you for being here and for sharing your story.
Of course. Thank you.
My next guest was Anna Zesbaugh, founder and CEO of Corpse Survivor. Anna, thank you so much for being here. If you wouldn't mind just starting with a brief background on yourself and on Corpse Survivor, that would be great.
Absolutely. Hi, I'm Anna, the founder of Corpse Survivor. We're a tea-based sparkling electrolyte beverage made to revive you after a night of one too many, or post-workout, etc. Originally inspired by a classic cocktail that was made with absinthe, very medicinally focused. We decided to lean into the tea base and the sparkling element to really feel like you could drink it all the way from your morning post-workout recovery into your evening usage occasion.
What's something the entire CPG industry believes that you just think is completely wrong?
I love this question. Slotting and free fills, honestly. I know it's like an industry standard thing, and obviously everything is negotiable. But so slotting is money that you pay to get on the shelf. And a free fill is basically a case of your product. So for us, 12 cans that you ship free to the store, every store. And we have 4 flavors. So 4 flavors to every store when you launch them. So if you're launching in 200 stores, it's 200 times 4. It gets very expensive very quickly. And for a brand who tries to do things pretty scrappily, obviously that costs us a lot of money, which makes it really hard for brands to get into new retail doors, and, you know, begs the question for us of like, is that worth it or not? And we're always running, you know, an ROI analysis to see if it makes sense. And sometimes it literally just doesn't. And I understand, you know, retailers have expensive shelf space, but for us, it just becomes like really cost prohibitive to do things.
I feel like the typical consumer doesn't know that either of those two phenomena exist.
No, I feel like I explain it and people are like, wait, what? You have to like pay to be there? And I'm like, oh yeah, I have to give my like literally firstborn child to be on shelf, baby.
Well, thank you for being here and for sharing your story.
Thank you. Cheers.
Absolutely. My next guest was Joe Rotondo, founder and CEO of Smearcase. Joe, it's nice to see you.
What's up, Josh? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. If you wouldn't mind just starting with a brief background on yourself and Smearcase, that would be great.
Yeah, my name is Joe Rotondo. I'm the founder of Smearcase. We make cottage cheese ice cream, frozen cottage cheese. We call it Froco. It's the first of its kind. We trademarked the term. It's high, Smearcase is high in protein, low in fat. It's half the sugar, half the calories. And then we have the most protein per any pint.
Incredible. What's something that the average person just completely misunderstands about the space in which you're operating?
Geez, well, we sort of operate in 3 different spaces: ice cream, protein, and cottage cheese. And I think what people don't understand about ice cream is that most ice cream, or people do understand that ice cream is just bad for you. It's not only bad for you because it's high in calories, high in fat, high in sugar. It also has a terrible ingredient list. It's full of gums, emulsifiers, bioengineered ingredients, things that just should not be in your body. They're putting it into ice cream. And nowadays they have ice cream that they can't even call ice cream because it doesn't even melt. And that was the impetus of starting Smearcase. And then the protein world, protein is having its moment because of GLP-1, because of people wanting to live happier, healthier lives, this whole health movement. And I'm so bullish on the protein movement. However, I'm not bullish on people just calling their food high protein because they're literally injecting it with protein powders and calling it high protein. It's the new greenwashing. Mm-hmm. I come from the fashion world, and I started a denim brand called Rocky Clark. And it was at the time of this whole greenwashing movement where Everlane was selling these, you know, organic cotton t-shirts, but then selling plastic pants. We're seeing the same sort of concept in food where people are saying it's high protein and people are seeing it as healthy, but in reality, the ingredients are loaded with nonsense, with gums, it's just a glorified supplement. Whereas Smearcase comes in and we're providing real nutritional value through real whole foods like cottage cheese, milk, collagen, things that you can pronounce and recognize. And I think we're bullish on cottage cheese frozen cottage cheese as a category, but we're also bullish on real whole foods, real nutritional value, and a clean ingredient list.
Is the ingredient list what's going to make Smearcase outlive the sort of protein hype cycle?
100%. Yeah, we have such high integrity and such high standards in our ingredient list because that's where health lives. If you're truly living a healthy life, a true holistic healthy life, the first thing you do is look at the ingredient list, not the macro profile. That's where we live in sourcing high integrity, clean ingredients. We use real California dairy from family-owned farms, and yeah, we're bullish on people looking at the ingredient list and not just like 0 calories this, 0 sugar that, because in reality, to get 0, you're putting chemicals into your body or chemicals into your ingredient list to arrive there.
Were there any trade-offs around what you did have to include? Were there any ingredients you did have to include that you didn't want to from the start? And if so, why?
That's a great question. And the answer is no. We put such a stringent box around ourselves and held ourselves to such high standards that we weren't willing to sacrifice the integrity of the product we're willing to pay a little bit more for collagen instead of a gum because we know that collagen is naturally derived and it adds nutritional value versus just being a filler ingredient. So we did not make any sacrifices when it came to the ingredients we use. And I think customers recognize that and customers value that.
Incredible. Well, thank you for being here and sharing your story.
Thanks, Josh. Appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
My next guest was Ilay Karateke, former guest of Unit Economics. Highly recommend checking that episode out if you haven't already. Ilay is the co-founder and CEO of Bezi. Ilay, it's so nice to see you.
So nice to see you as well.
If you wouldn't mind just giving a brief background on yourself and on Bezi, that would be great.
Yeah, so I'm the founder of Bezi. We launched about a year and a half ago. We're building labneh as a category. We make plain and everything, red pepper, hot honey, like different flavored labnehs. We're based out of New York.
What's something the entire CPG industry believes that you just think is completely wrong?
So I think a lot of people feel like if you get a lot of funding and go fast, you'll go to places. I think Bezi exists as a complete opposite of that. We love going slow and we love building a cash flow positive business. But I think the further I do this, now we're going to be 2 years old very soon, more people are telling me it's a bad idea. I know.
What's their rationale?
I think the rationale is like I'm holding myself back. And it was so funny because Joy and I were literally talking about this previously. It's an hypothesis that I truly believe in. And I think building slow, understanding what works and doesn't, and while building like a real fundamental business is important. But a lot of people are telling me it's a terrible idea.
I think they're wrong.
We shall see. I think this is going to either age great or age terribly. But we'll see.
We will see. Time will tell.
We'll see in 5 years.
Yes. Well, thank you so much.
Of course.
I really appreciate it.
Of course. Happy to be
If
here.
you haven't tried Bezi, you should try Bezi.
Everyone should try Bezi.
Everyone should try Bezi.
Everyone should try. Amazing. Well, thank you.
Absolutely. Next up, I spoke with Erin Sager, founder of Caltein. Erin, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. If you wouldn't mind just starting with a brief background on yourself and Caltein, that would be great.
Sure. So I started Caltein a little over 2 years ago. I used to work at SpaceX, actually. I'm a rocket scientist, but I traded the rocket ship for chocolate chips, so now I make protein shortbread.
Why?
It doesn't take a rocket scientist to tell you that protein bars promise nutrition and rarely deliver on taste. And I was so frustrated with it, I had to change it. So I started Caltein.
Incredible. What's something the average person completely misunderstands about the space in which you're operating?
I think people misunderstand protein. And I think it's honestly an artifact of the fact that the protein category for so long has been, I guess, run by products that might not be so flavor forward or texture forward. And it's no fault of the consumer, it's no fault of the brands. Like, there's been innovations in a lot of ingredients, and I think consumer trends have changed over time. I think at first, when people were using protein as a category, it was people using it specifically for utility, and the taste and texture was secondary. But now, because protein's more approachable and everyone wants it, every American wants more protein, flavor is now becoming something that I think is going to become more important as we see all protein brands coming out of the woodwork, especially mine.
Amazing. Well, thank you for being here and for sharing your story.
Thank you.
The next guest I spoke with was Liv Truesdell, founder of Frost Buttercream. Liv, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's
Absolutely.
an honor to meet you.
Absolutely. If you wouldn't mind just starting with a brief background on yourself and on Frost, that would be great.
Yeah. So I'm Liv. I grew up baking with my mom and always kind of felt like making frosting was another step. And for us, frosting was always something we would make and never something we would get from the store because it was always so sweet and full of artificial ingredients and didn't ever end up tasting like anything you would make from home or get from a bakery. And so I guess fast forwards, I graduated college, went into investment banking, worked with consumer companies doing M&A. But I always wanted to be kind of on the product side and to start something of my own. And it kind of felt like a natural fit to launch Frost Buttercream, which is an all-natural, true Italian meringue bakery quality frosting that has, real butter, egg whites, a lot less sugar. So it's a lot less sweet than your typical frosting on the market. It has up to 57% less sugar than the leading buttercream. And what a lot of people tell me is that they love that the flavor profile is a lot less sweet because, if you look at a lot of processed foods in America, everything's loaded with sugar to kind of cover up either the palm oil or artificial ingredients that are used. So we really worked to create a recipe that would take over an hour and a half to make and like the skill of a pastry chef to have it ready to eat right from your fridge.
Yeah, that's incredible. What's something that the average person completely misunderstands about the space in which you're operating?
Yeah, so I think in the bakery space, in the baked goods space, a lot of the products that you can get either ready to eat or ready to use are full of artificial ingredients loaded with sugar and have a lot of dyes. And I think those artificial dyes kind of came to light recently. A lot of companies are reformulating and trying to get rid of those products, in the next couple of years that are using artificial dyes. But I think when you buy desserts and buy baked goods, you kind of assume it's like something you would get at home, something you would make at home. And it's like, oh, of course there's going to be butter in this. Of course, there's real flour. And then you look at the ingredients of buttercreams on the market and there's no real butter in them. And so I think what's basically misunderstood is just that, when you're getting cereal or something that you don't typically make at home, there are so many more ingredients that you're used to seeing on that label. And you might not know exactly what goes into those products, but when it's like a muffin or a cupcake, you've made that before, you think it's clean, and it's not.
Yeah, has it been challenging at all to educate the consumer? I imagine it's not a very hard sell once somebody knows what's in your product.
Definitely. So I think what's an interesting point is also kind of why we started smaller scale and why we started small batch is we're selling our frosting refrigerated. So there isn't anything artificial. It has real butter. But because of that, consumers have to go to a different aisle than they normally would to buy frosting. So normally that's the baking aisle, but here we are now selling it in the fridge. And so we wanted to start small scale to kind of see if this would stick, to see if consumers would kind of keep coming back and finding it in the fridge. And so I think, what's interesting is they are, and today more products are being sold in the fridge. You have pastas, you have more clean, natural foods, and so it's becoming more of the norm for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for being here and for sharing your story.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
And last but not least, my final guest of the night was Megan Black. Megan, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. If you wouldn't mind just starting with a brief background on yourself and Sonni, that would be great.
Yeah. So I'm originally from Toronto. I went to USC for undergrad and then moved to New York, where I worked at the Estee Lauder companies for 4 years. I was doing global e-commerce strategy. So I was, spending a lot of time working across the whole portfolio of 25 brands and building their e-commerce businesses. And then after that, went to Kellogg, where I got my MBA. And it was during that time that I started working on Sonni. A lot of things kind of happened around the same time. Obviously, I had a background in skincare, and I was thinking through my next steps and also realizing that, I was born a ginger. I've been getting sunburnt my entire life. My older sister around that time got melanoma taken out of her ear. She's totally fine, thank God. But I realized if I didn't start, actually embracing sunscreen as an everyday thing in my life, I'd be next.
Yeah.
So that's when I started kind of looking into formulas and trying to figure out why is it that we all know we should be wearing sunscreen every day, but we don't. And it's honestly, it all comes down to experience.
What's a small decision you made early on that wound up mattering a lot?
Yeah, so early on, I realized science needed to be at the heart of this, especially because my background is on the business side. I'm not a formulator. And so I brought on some really amazing science advisors at the beginning, one of which is our chief science advisor, Dr. Christina Boole, at the University of Minnesota. And it was in my early conversations with her, before I'd even figured out what the products were going to be, where she said, Megan, if you're aiming to have products that do all of these things and they're mineral and they have these ingredients and not these ingredients, then you should really consider dermatology being a really big avenue for the brand. And it was that first conversation where she actually suggested, once we had put the final products in front of her and we've showed her all the different ingredients and the science behind them, she was like, this needs to be at the American Academy of Dermatology. This is a brand that like would be accepted into the community in ways that a lot of your competitors wouldn't. And so this past March, we went to the American Academy of Dermatology conference. It was in Denver. It was a 4-day slog. It felt like we'd, run 10 marathons while there. It really is one hell of a conference, I will say. But we got to meet like hundreds of dermatologists and have them all try it.
Yeah.
And really have them become advocates for the brand. And now we're starting to get into derm offices, and definitely into med spas. But really, I think like it was a small kind of thing that she mentioned, but I hadn't realized kind of how there are two sides to the sun care category. There's the lifestyle side where you find amazing brands like Vacation. And then there's the really, really strong science side, which is more like an Ulta MD. And so we're really trying to be somewhere in the middle.
Amazing. Well, thank you for being here and for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I hope you enjoyed these conversations as much as I did. Again, this is not the typical format for a unit economics episode, but I still managed to learn a lot, which is always a primary goal of mine. If this episode is your introduction to unit economics, I highly recommend checking out some of the other long-form interviews I've recorded. And if you haven't already, make sure to follow and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.